Corlia. We welcome the publication of this report on the 6th of March. It provides important data on areas that are key to the well-being of our population, such as loneliness, levels of happiness and anxiety, and whether or not people think the things that they do are worthwhile. Overall, higher life satisfaction and worthwhile scores indicate an improvement in individual well-being compared with previous figures. 34% of people reported very high levels of life satisfaction, 37% of people reported very high levels of happiness, and 42% reported very high levels of feeling that the things they do are worthwhile. 66% of people reported very low or low levels of anxiety, and there was a significant decrease in the number of people who reported feeling lonely at least some of the time. However, not everyone in our society experiences the same levels of well-being. People who reported their health as very good reported better levels of well-being than those that reported their health as bad or very bad. And people with a disability reported lower levels of well-being than those without a disability. People living in the most deprived areas reported the lowest levels of individual well-being compared with all other areas. And people in employment reported better levels of well-being than those not in employment. Our programme for government highlights our commitment to working together to improve the well-being of everyone who lives and works here.
Mr Dunn.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank the First Minister for her answer. Can I ask the First Minister how information included in reports such as these will be used to track progress against the programme for government in tackling issues such as anxiety and loneliness, which, as outlined in this report, do remain alarmingly high right across Northern Ireland?
Yeah, when you reflect on the report, there's been some improvements, but some areas where we just need to keep a very close full eye. And I think the programme for government measurements are well-being indicators which will be used to sort of chart our advances and our progresses across all these areas. The fact that it's going to be continuously updated will give us a chance to actually see where we are making progress, and certainly, perhaps even more importantly, let us see where we're not making progress and where people's outcomes haven't improved. There are 51 indicators in total, and all of these are updated at various points throughout the year in line with their source of publications, so they all come from different sources. But we will continue to update those on an ongoing basis. And to give you an example, data for indicators on life satisfaction, self-efficacy and loneliness were published as part of the individual wellbeing report on the 6th of March, and then the wellbeing framework was updated to include those indicators just 5 days later on the 11th of March. So that gives you a sense of just how in real play and real time these things can be updated.
And I thank the First Minister for her answers. Does the First Minister agree that the programme for government is a key statement of intent from the Executive to work together to improve people's lives?
Mr.
Yes, I certainly do. It is our effort together to work together to share an ambitious programme for the Executive. The PFG itself has been designed to make things better, to improve people's lives, to improve their lot, to do better in areas of health and tackling waiting lists, our environment and childcare, on growing a globally competitive economy, providing more social and affordable homes and sustainable homes, building safer communities, ending violence against women and girls, and much more. But that's going to require a collective focus and sustained commitment if we're going to deliver the real and positive differences to people's lives here. And that's what I believe we're all ultimately here to do. There will, of course, be tough challenges ahead, financial challenges ahead, but sure, we know all of that also. But we can, and indeed we must, make a real difference to improving people's lives, and that's why our focus is now all about delivery. And for my part, I want to continue to work with all around the Chamber and across our Executive to deliver the positive change that people want to see on the issues that matter most to them and their families.
Buchanan. Question 2, please.
As part of our commitment to supporting victims and survivors, we have ensured that the funding for VSS has consistently been protected from cuts. We continue to keep the level of funding under review. This financial year we have provided over £21 million to VSS to ensure continued help and support for victims and survivors of the conflict, historical institutional abuse, mother and baby institutions and Magdalen laundries and workhouses. Support is also provided for those that are assessing the Victims Payment Scheme. VSS provides funding to community groups here to deliver essential support and services to victims and survivors. In addition, this year over 6,000 people have been supported through self-directed assistance payments alone. It is the lead partner of the €25 million Peace Plus programme, which aims to improve the health and well-being of victims and survivors, by increasing access to high-quality trauma-informed services. VSS is now engaged with our officials in preparation for a new victim support programme from April 2026. This programme will allow support and services provided by VSS and its community partner organisations to continue, and also it will play a vital role in achieving the outcomes outlined in the Victims and Survivors Strategy.
Buchanan.
Thank you, and thanks for your answer so far. First Minister, what is your assessment of how the fund is distributed to the relevant groups, and how is it assessed based on their outputs?
Well, funding is distributed by an open call mechanism, and that's absolutely always managed just directly by VSS, and all groups themselves have delivery plans which are renewed annually and aligned to their own budget allocation. The plans themselves are then agreed with VSS, and delivery is monitored by VSS on a quarterly basis. So I think there's a fair degree of oversight in terms of how the funding is delivered to all those groups out there that are on the ground providing excellent services to support victims.
Nicola Brogan.
Thank the Minister for her answer so far. Can the First Minister provide an update on the appointment of a new chair and board members of the VSS, please?
Thank you for that, and I can confirm my commitment that we want to get this done as quickly as possible. In terms of the appointment of a new chair and board members for the VSS, interviews for the posts concluded on the 11th of March. We received an unranked list of successful candidates at the end of March as per the Capani Code, and then in June we were issued a list of our preferred candidates to our officials, and candidates were informed by HR Connect that they've been successful. And then by the 8th of August, all pre-employment checks were confirmed to have been completed, and we were provided with completed political activity forms and draft formal appointment letters for our signature. Again, that's a requirement by Capani. So I hope that the successful candidates will take up their posts without further delay, and that will ensure that VSS continues to do the great work that it does and has a full board and its court at all times. My commitment is to get this done as quickly as possible.
Paula Bradshaw.
Please. We are pleased to advise that the Deputy First Minister and I will shortly be meeting with the candidates who have been deemed appointable by the selection panel. The appointment of a new Commissioner is essential to inform the development of policies and to help ensure the longer-term needs of victims and survivors are represented by a strong, independent voice. As we have previously informed members, the appointment process is regulated by the Commissioner for Public Appointments, and as such it must comply with the Code of Practice for Ministerial Public Appointments.
Ms Bradshaw.
Speaker, and thank you, First Minister. I suppose I asked the question in the context of the work of the Northern Ireland Office, UK Government at the minute around the replacement to the Legacy Act, and I just feel that this Commissioner and the people that he or she works with will have such a pivotal role in terms of what should be coming forward in terms of amendments to that. So I'm just wondering if there's any talk about that being specific to this role. Thank you.
No, I think we've got an opportunity, and as I said, we're at the end stage of the appointment process, and the Deputy First Minister and I will be interviewing in the coming weeks, and I think that allows us then to make a successful appointment and let that person get on with doing what they believe is right in terms of the needs of our victims and survivors community here. And I think that's really, really important, as the member is very aware in her role as committee chair. I mean, the role of the Commissioner is so vitally important, particularly in terms of advocacy, history and education, and also young people, and it's very much about improving the lives of victims and survivors, but it's also equally about making sure that the services that are in place at this moment in time are always fit for purpose. So there's a huge interest for the new appointee, but I look forward to us getting to the point where we're able to make that appointment as quickly as possible.
Shane.
I welcome that a public recruitment competition for a new Irish Language Commissioner has commenced. Would the First Minister agree with me that would be hugely welcome development among Gaeilgeoirí and the Irish language community in general, and represent another step forward in building a society underpinned by rights and respect for all?
Yes, to the member. Yes, I think it is a significant milestone, the fact that they are now out for appointment also. I think it's something that's very much appreciated by Gaeilgeoirí. There's no doubt the influence of the Irish language can be seen in every corner of life. Yesterday was a good example of that on St Patrick's Day. All the celebration right across every corner of society, community groups, media, arts, education, politics. It's very much a living language and very much everywhere is Teanga Bio, and Gaeilge. But the Irish language does belong to us all, and for my part, I want to continue to work hard to promote its development, but also to build on the real and tangible progress that we have made in our society. I can also confirm that, I'm very glad to confirm that the other competitions to recruit the Director and other members of the Office of Identity and Cultural Expression and the Commissioner for Ulster Scots and Ulster British Tradition are now launched as well. And each Commissioner will play a leading role in enhancing and protecting the language in our public services and everyday life. So I look forward to that coming to fruition as we seek to build a society that's underpinned by rights and respect for all. And I should just add, in terms of, in the vein of Commissioners, we've also launched the Commissioner for Older People, again, something that was very much welcomed, and I know that members of the House would want to welcome that also as well.
Justin McGildy.
August Ceann Comhairle. First and Deputy First Minister, when previously asked about the appointment of a Commissioner for Victims and Survivors, we were told it would be early next year. Now that we're into the third month of the year, can you confirm that there will be an appointment before summer recess?
As I said in my initial answer, we are now at the process where we're able to move to interview stage. So we're very close, we're very much at the end of the process, and I look forward to us getting the appointment over the line and getting it announced in the coming weeks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Question number 5.
The establishment of a memorial is the final outstanding recommendation of the Hart Report, and we remain committed to its implementation. Following our engagement with the 4 main victims and survivors groups, we are pleased to confirm that there is support for fulfilling this recommendation through a memorial plaque here in Parliament Buildings. We will be writing to the Speaker seeking approval to progress this and are grateful for his support to date. We also recognise that some survivors wish to see a broader programme, including localised memorials. Officials have spoken to local authorities, and we've also sought input from representative groups and those that are not associated or affiliated with any particular group. And once potential locations are confirmed, we're going to work with the Arts Council on ensuring that the views of victims and survivors are very much central to designing the memorial.
Mr. Dixon.
Thank you very much, and thank you, First Minister, for your answer to the question. Minister, given that some of those groups, as you've said, are not happy or comfortable with the proposals, can you indicate to us just how your office will take into account the sensitivity and breadth of concerns expressed by victims and survivors?
Minister.
I can assure you that we'll do everything that we can to make sure that their views are taken on board. These are people that have been failed at every turn over the years, and it's important that we get this right. And we've committed, both the Deputy First Minister and myself have met some of the groups, we've met individuals, and we want to continue to engage with them because their voice is absolutely crucial, and we must get this right in terms of this remaining part of this jigsaw in terms of the memorialisation. So I think we're making some strides forward in terms of the memorialisation in this building itself, but then there's that wider area where we're going to work with the Arts Council to look at what other form of memorial would be appropriate, because there are differences, as the member has recognised. Some feel like an education programme perhaps is the best way to go. Some feel that plaques are appropriate. Everybody will have a different view, but we must make sure we have a forum where everybody's view will be heard, and I can give you that assurance. That's the determination of the Deputy First Minister and myself.
Linda Dillon.
Ceann Comhairle, and thank you, First Minister, for your answers, and I'm glad to hear that there is intention for a wider programme. Can you detail how the victims and survivors will be, how their voices, you will ensure how their voices will be heard and that they are engaged right throughout that widening of the programme?
Sure.
Yeah, so as I said, both the Deputy First Minister and myself have met with some of the groups because we do want them to know that they are being heard in our office, and that as we advance the memorialisation, that we're doing so in a way that is something that's going to be received well by themselves, and it makes a difference to themselves and their own experience. So we are going to ensure that their voices are heard. We're going to, as I said, we've made a progress here in this building, but in terms of next steps, officials are going to continue to engage directly with victims and survivors through the representative groups, but also through direct outreach to those that are not affiliated with any of the groups. But we also envisage that the additional element to all of that will be that the Arts Council itself will provide a structured forum for victims and survivor input. So therefore they get to help to shape what is the the final memorial and what it might look like and what form it might take, what the wording may perhaps be. So they will be part and parcel of helping to shape memorials in a way that reflects their own personal experience and their own wishes. So I think that we would hope that that sort of broad approach will be the best way in which we can ensure that the widest possible range of voices are heard as we develop these plans further.
John Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 6.
Minister.
The Programme for Government 24 to 2027 acknowledges that we must work together across government and society to end the epidemic of violence, abuse and harm against women and girls. Our long-term focus is on early intervention and prevention. We've already made significant progress from the steps we committed to undertaking in the Programme for Government itself. We've launched the EVOG Change Fund, representing a £3.2 million investment for community and voluntary sector organisations, and also grassroots communities in partnership with local councils. We've also launched the Power to Change campaign with partners in Justice and the PSNI to challenge unacceptable attitudes and reduce harmful behaviours of men and boys. We've also established key sectoral working groups to improve outcomes for women and girls in education, workplace and social and nighttime settings. Through the SBRA Challenge Fund, we've invested in organisations to explore how to use technological innovation to improve understanding and prevention, and also to improve the safety of women and girls everywhere. So we're going to continue to work with executive colleagues to support delivery and communications, as well as advising on innovation and good practice.
Mr. Buckley.
Thank you, Speaker. I welcome the strategy which aims to protect women and young girls from violence. Today's society poses many real threats to women and young girls, including from those biological males who masquerade as females. So can I ask the First Minister, does she share my concerns, and indeed the concerns of many women in our community, and the common sense view that biological men, should not be able to compete in female sport, and that female safe spaces, particularly female changing rooms, should never be accessible to biological males, no ifs or no buts?
Look, I'm not going down this route. What I will say is that our strategy, which you've asked me a question in relation to, is very much about ending violence against all women in society. It's not focused on perpetrators, it's focused on ending violence against women who receive or always receive an end of this violence. I'm not taking you up on going down a one-way street of trying to marginalise one section of the community over the other. I don't think that is helpful. I'm all about protection for women. I don't think there's anybody in this chamber that isn't.
Cathy Mason.
Can Corlia, and I thank the First Minister for her answers. Can the First Minister please provide an update on the End of Violence Against Women and Girls Change Fund?
Yeah, thank you to the member for the question. So I can confirm that the £3.2 million has been allocated to the Change Fund, and that comes under 2 different strands of work, both of which launched in January, and will assist both local groups and organisations, as well as 8 community and voluntary sector expert organisations in their work to end violence against women and girls. As part of the EVOG Local Change Fund, funding of £1.4 million has been allocated across councils, and that's going to make grants up to £25,000 available to community and voluntary sector organisations who are operating in a very local way, providing funding direct to grassroots community groups to build capacity and to allow them to take local action. And I can say to the member that I was actually just at a young women's group for International Women's Day, and I was actually quite surprised to learn how this funding is actually filtered right down into grassroots level. This is a small rural community group, Clonode Young Women's Group, and they themselves were part of bidding into the local council for a small pot of funding that allowed them to devise a device that actually helped the young women in the community feel safe. And I felt so proud that a strategy that we have agreed on this chamber actually was making a difference on the ground with young teenagers and young women and young men who were talking about, across society, talking about violence against women and girls. But these young women's group had actually devised something that was funded through this programme. To me, that's something at a very high level strategy working in action, and I was very proud of that piece of work and to see that happening. But across all of our councils, the applications are open until the end of this month, and delivery is going to be commencing from April 2025. And we've also announced the £1.2 million investment under the EVOG Regional Change Fund on the 21st of January, and that funding again is going to be available up until the end of March 2026, with support and partner with 8 community and voluntary sector expert organisations who are already leading the way right across the North in terms of preventing violence against women and girls. Additionally, we have provided 600,000 across the level local council areas.
Your time's up to
Sorry,
answer this.
okay, thank you. So anyway, there's lots of work happening on the ground, and I can see our strategy filtering right onto the ground, which is more important.
Cara Hunter.
Thank the First Minister for her answer so far. First Minister, on page 33 of the Ending Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, it alludes to creating a technology challenge fund to address digital violence towards women and girls online. Can you detail today how or if the funding alluded to in the programme for government will contribute to this?
Yeah, as the member is acutely aware from her own personal experience, the online experience of so many women is absolutely horrific, to say the least. And that's why it is important that as part of our strategy we are looking at this very area. This is also a very evolving situation as new software and things come online and new ways in which to engage online. So I can say to the member that as part of our office's work, Ofcom actually briefed our junior ministers last week in terms of the work of Ofcom on terms of their regulatory framework, and also the passing of the Online Safety Act in 2023. Cases like your own, a number of high-profile recent cases, have really demonstrated why we need to get more active in this field, and we need to stay ahead of the technology, and we need to be advancing. So I think that's something that we all want to increasingly, I suppose, get ahead of as best as you can in this complicated world. But I think the increasing challenge lies in the fact that the online platforms and the way in which young people engage is something that's quite challenging. But we have, in the framework itself, we have built-in agility to actually lend ourselves to these problems as they arise, particularly in relation to expanding on how we're going to tackle ending online harm and technological abuse, including sexually explicit deepfake imagery as well.
Timothy Gallison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Further to Mr. Buckley's supplementary question and the non-answer that he got, what is the First Minister's take on a biological man beating up a woman in the boxing ring because he claims to be a woman?
First Minister.
Not related to the question, and I told you I'm not playing your game. I've told you this on every occasion you ask me, and every time you ask me the question, I'm going to give you the same answer.
Ms McAllister is not in her seat. Question 8 was withdrawn. I call William Irwin. Minister.
We are delighted to have appointed Siobhan Casey as Commissioner for Older People. Siobhan will be in post from the 7th of April 2025. We recognise that the role of the Commissioner as being vital in safeguarding and promoting the interests of older people here, and ensuring that the welfare and rights of this sector are respected and protected, and also that their voice is heard. So we look forward to engaging with the new Commissioner as she sets her priorities for the year ahead, and also that she champions the rights and needs of older people.
Mr. Irwin.
Would the First Minister agree with me that rights of older people are very important, because many old people feel that decisions are being made without their consent, even though they have the capacity to make those decisions themselves?
Yeah, I think that's why it's important that we have our Commissioner now in place, and I think certainly the Deputy First Minister, I'm sure, would agree with me that when we interviewed Siobhan, has a real passion for being an advocate for older people. She's great depth of experience in her previous role, and I think that's really going to enhance her offering to our older population. The role of the Commissioner is quite wide in promoting an awareness of matters relating to and safeguarding of older people, challenging discrimination, promoting positive attitudes. And I can tell you that from my experience of the interview, the calibre of Siobhan coming forward is going to be somebody who is going to be energetic on behalf of older people out there in society.
Mr. Clark's not in his place. I call Steve Egan.
The Executive Office has led an effective and coordinated local humanitarian response to support those arriving here following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. To date, we have welcomed even over 3,400 Ukrainian citizens under the visa routes established by Westminster. Our department has ensured appropriate safeguarding checks have been undertaken to allow arrivals to be welcomed in the homes of local sponsors, and indeed to ensure the sponsors themselves are supported. Each arrival has received a £200 immediate cash support payment, and eligible hosts have received monthly thank you payments. Over $689,000 has been paid in immediate support, and more than $5.1 million has been paid to more than 1,000 hosts. The department has also facilitated and coordinated support provided by other key departments. statutory bodies and voluntary and community sector organisations in vital areas such as health, education, benefits and immigration advice. Officials are also in regular contact with the Ukrainians and ANI community group.
Dr. Aiken.
The Minister will be aware the reason why we have so many Ukrainian refugees is because Russia is attacking them, and there's nearly daily air attacks. Could the Minister reflect on her remarks when she said she was incredulous that we were going to support the Ukrainians by giving them the opportunity to defend themselves? And does she not think that goes counter to actually what she said in the first place on her first question she was answering me about the Ukraine? How could it possibly be incredulous?
Well, I stand over my remarks. I'll repeat them for you again today. I think, look, there's no escaping the fact that Russia's invasion of Ukraine, what it's meant in terms of the devastation that's left behind, we all witness that every day and we all want it to come to an end. It's a flagrant breach of international law, but the best way to end these things is actually with diplomacy, to create a situation where we have a lasting peace. I think that's very, very important. I want to see genuine engagement, I want to see constructive dialogue, I want to see an end to the conflict. I want Ukrainian people to be living in their homeland happy and peaceful and prosperous. That's unfortunately not where we are today. So at a time whenever the world is in flux, at a time whenever we're looking at a re-armed Europe, at a time whenever today we're discussing welfare cuts to people who have disabilities, people who are sick, but the British government can't find money to support them, but they can find money to arm. I don't think that is the right approach for anybody to take.
Jill Guy.
We recognise the immense economic, historical and reconciliation potential of the site and are committed to working with the Maze Long Cash Board to maximise those opportunities for the benefit of all. The Board met with the TEO Permanent Secretary on the 27th of February 2025, and since that meeting we have received advice from officials on the options for the Board and also for the immediate priorities. That's currently under consideration in our office, but no decisions have been made yet in terms of the future of the site.
Mrs. Guy.
Thank you, First Minister, for the answer. Have you presented with options for the MLK Development Corporation on a way forward, and have these been considered, and what are the next steps with that?
Sure.
Yes, so just as I've said, we've just recently received some information, particularly in terms of those specific options, and we have to meet then with our Permanent Secretary to discuss these, but as I said, no decisions have been made at this moment in time, but this is something that we have to discuss because we have to, as I said, politically, or before in this chamber, what we need to see is a political agreement in terms of what I think is the enormous economic potential of the site. You know this, I know you agree with that. I think many others here agree with that. Also, I think it could be a game changer for our local economy, so I hope that we can get to the point where we have a political agreement, and I hope that we can get the site opened up in a way that will bring huge benefits to our local economy.
Mr. Brett's not in this place. Call down Armstrong.
And First Minister, can I ask you question 14?
Thank you. We're flying through them today. The Executive faced significant challenges setting a budget for 24-25, and the financial position remains very difficult due to the interim fiscal framework. We therefore have insufficient budget, and conversations are ongoing regarding this. As a consequence of this, the departments are all facing tough decisions to manage their budgets and to live within their funding allocations. This year we had to agree a 24-25 budget ahead of the programme for government to make sure that departments had the certainty needed to run public services. This enabled the department to plan ahead to deliver our joint priorities, and then over the last 12 months the Executive has delivered significant outcomes for workers, families and communities, including public sector pay, improvements in childcare provision, a strategy to end violence against women and girls, among much more. Equally, we know that there's an awful lot more still to be done across the remainder of this mandate, and we want to continue to build upon what we have been able to achieve for people in this first year. The draft budget itself was agreed on the 19th of December, and the consultation on this closed just last week on the 13th of March, and it's now for the Executive to agree its final budget and work together to develop and agree the detailed policies as we move to delivering the commitments which we've all signed up to in the programme for government.
That brings us to the topical questions for the First Minister, and I call Matthew O'Toole.
First Minister, was it right for you, the Deputy First Minister and others to create the expectation that people who lost power as a result of Storm Éowyn would receive compensation, given those hopes have now been dashed?
It was right for ourselves to make the good, strong and articulate case for why people needed to have compensation. Unfortunately, that is not how it has transpired. I think a lot of effort, as we said at the time, and a lot of credit needs to go to all of our agencies that responded in live play and at that time in terms of trying to support people and get them reconnected. But there's no doubt that people had their lives disrupted, and it's disappointing that Ofcom and Utility Regulator couldn't find their way to provide the compensation which we all articulated was absolutely needed.
Mr. O'Toole.
With respect, First Minister, you aren't, and nor is the Deputy First Minister, Advice NI. It's not your job simply to be articulate and to make cases. It's your job to lead. Whenever thousands of people heard you, the Deputy First Minister and the then Economy Minister say that compensation should be paid, that created an expectation. Those people have been let down. Would you perhaps reflect that in the future, perhaps governing takes more than simply warm words?
First Minister.
I will not apologise for standing up for people. I won't apologise for working hard on people's behalf. I believe that in terms of the storm response itself, I believe that every agency put its shoulder to the wheel. I think everybody got on the ground immediately to try to assist. I believe we give out the right warnings to try to get people ahead. But of course, we're going to make the case for people to have compensation. It was the right thing to do, and I'll do it again tomorrow if needs be. But let's work to ensure that where lessons are learned, and for future storm, which we know, just given climate, that is where we will unfortunately inevitably be. And we need to look at how we can best support people at times of crisis. I think that's what we all want to do.
First Minister, given the news that Israel has renewed their deadly air attacks on the people of Gaza, will the First Minister agree that this is an appalling breach of the ceasefire?
First Minister.
Yeah, I think that last night's airstrikes in Gaza were nothing short of a brutal and inhumane assault on people who are defenceless. These are people with nowhere to go. These are people with no roofs over their head. These are people with no food in front of them. Children are trapped in a nightmare with nowhere to run. And what we've seen over the course of the last 24, 48 hours are Israeli bombs raining down again on the people of Palestine. For the love of God, what and who could ever think that this is remotely acceptable? And it's a gross failure of leadership and utterly reprehensible that world leaders are standing by. World leaders, including in the United States, standing by and nearly in some ways cheerleading what Israel are doing in Palestine. So I think that what we've witnessed over the course of the recent day has been another act of genocide on the part of Israel, another act to murder and kill and maim the Palestinian people. And I again appeal to the international community for everybody to put their efforts to the fore again. It's now time to act. We need to see a resolution for everybody in the Middle East. We need to see a resolution which is a two-state solution and something that will give peace to both Palestinians and Israelis.
Thank you, First Minister. The Palestinian people in Gaza have endured horrendous slaughter at the hands of the Israeli occupation forces, in particular over the last year and a half. Would you agree that Israel needs to stop their attacks and respect the ceasefire?
Yes, I call on the Israeli government to reinstate and to respect the ceasefire that was achieved. But the international community, including Britain and in Dublin, need to ensure that all pressure is exerted to avert what is happening right now. Israel just can't be allowed to continue to breach international law and to annex the Palestinian people and to basically to attack them day and daily. It just can't continue. Where are the international community at this moment in time when the Palestinians need them?
Chambers.
The First Minister gave her initial assessment of the benefits of the visit to Washington last week by a large Northern Ireland delegation.
Well, as the member is aware, I didn't attend Washington last week, but I can tell you that for reasons that I've just referenced, because of the situation in Palestine, because of the stance of the US administration, and because I simply will not turn the other way when we see such a breach of international law and the genocide of the Palestinian people. And I'm telling you all, whenever everybody will reflect on this period in time, and there'll be those that decided to look away, and there are those that didn't, I would be proud to say I did not look away. But I believe we can make that principled position, but also work to promote our local economy, which I'm glad that we were able to do over the course of the recent week. It showcased ourselves as a great place to live, to work, to invest, to study, and we very much took that message when the Deputy First Minister and I led a Chamber of Commerce delegation when we went to mark the first anniversary of a Memorandum of Understanding with the North Carolina Chamber. And that itself was an opportunity for us to promote our vision for our economy, and also to say that we are such a fantastic place with such innovators and such world-leading businesses. And it was a sense of pride, actually, I think, for the Deputy First Minister and myself to lead such a strong delegation of local business people. And it gave us an opportunity to also extend an invite to the North Carolina Chamber and their political representatives to come here at some stage, hopefully this year also. That will allow us then again to further those relationships that we have built. And as you know, the Deputy First Minister then went on to Washington and carried out a whole programme of events, and again with those messages in terms of us being a great place for investment and a great place to, with great agility and a small community that actually can be very much the world leading in the fore of many, many areas.
Mr. Chambers.
Focusing on the economic benefits, would the Minister agree with me that her full attendance in Washington in her position as a First Minister for all would have added value to the visit?
I'm content with the decision that I made, as I'm sure the Deputy First Minister is also content with her own decision.
And can I thank the First Minister for the principled stance that she took in terms of the events that she didn't attend, but in terms of following on from the previous speaker, can the First Minister maybe outline in detail her recent trip to North Carolina?
Yeah, as I said, it was a real pleasure to visit North Carolina with the Chamber, and for us to have the opportunity to lead that delegation of local business leaders, where we had the chance to set out our stall to some of the world's leading businesses. We took this opportunity to showcase the strengths of our economy, and we do have a really, really good story to tell, and a very, very positive story to tell. An incredibly talented workforce. We made the case for why they should invest here at home. Some of the businesses that travelled on the delegation are world leading in innovation and the work that they do. So it was very much about attracting major investment. It was about creating those better jobs here. And it was about delivering exciting opportunities for people, because that's a priority which we've set out in our programme for government. So I think North Carolina was absolutely well worth doing, and I look forward to other international visits that align with what we're trying to do for our own local economy here.
Mr. McGuigan.
I asked the First Minister, will she continue working to promote the North as a vibrant place to live, work and invest in?
Yes, I am absolutely determined, as is the Deputy First Minister and our entire executive, I believe, to continue to promote our wares here, to sell what we have on that international front, because we have great people, we have a happy population, we have a talented workforce, we have a young, strong cohort coming out of our universities. We just have a very skilled population base. So the story that we tell is a good story and something that resonates very well on that international stage. So I think when we look towards the future, growing our economy, we look towards what are our opportunities. We equally look towards what are our challenges, and tariffs is probably up there with those at this moment in time. But I think the enormous opportunity that we have ahead of us in terms of creating more jobs and bettering people's lives, because we have that unique access to both markets, both the European and the British markets, and we have a thriving all-island economy. So all those things puts us firmly on the map as a great place to live and to invest and to do business, and that's something that I am wholly committed to. So I hope that we can continue to keep working together to maximise all of this potential, and I have no doubt that we will do so.
Colin McGillivray.
First Minister, the British Government have just announced a series of cuts to welfare payments, particularly focused on disability payments, causing massive concern, rightly so, including for people who rely on those supports. Will the First Minister commit to raising this issue with the British Government?
Yeah, I haven't seen the full detail, but I know it's been announced, and I think, yes, absolutely, we have to raise this issue with the British Government. I'm sure the Department of Communities will likewise be wanting to raise these issues, because I think that this is yet again more of the same from this government in London, who are reaching constantly for those people who need our support more than others. These are people that have brought in the national insurance hike that's going to be so detrimental to our local businesses. These are people who have cut the winter fuel payment for pensioners, and now they're reaching for people with disabilities and those that are sick and vulnerable in our society. I mean, these are political choices. political choices being made in London that are impacting detrimentally on our lives here, and we don't have a say in that. So I think that targeting the most vulnerable in our society through these punitive taxes is clearly a political choice in London, but it does not serve the interests of our people here. But I can assure you that yes, we will take every opportunity to raise these issues with the relevant people in London.
Mr Gildernew.
Cormac, and does the First Minister also agree with me that the levels of funding supplied from the British Government to the Executive are simply not enough?
This was one of our day one priorities, and I think every party actually represented in the Chamber, I believe, party grouping certainly signed up to that being the case, and we have seen that they have recognised that we have been underfunded, but we're feeling the detriment and the impact of 14 years of Tory austerity, and now that's being continued as a political choice by this new British Government, and that's impacting our public services every day and our ability to deliver on health and education and transform and do all the things that we've said that we want to do. So we have to continue to make this case. We have to continue to build the case for why we need a proper funding model. We're not asking for special treatment, we're asking for what is appropriate. The people here pay taxes, they pay their national insurance, they deserve good public services. So we have to continue to make this case to the Treasury in London and ensure that our voice is heard. I think we can reflect on the fact that we have made some progress here, but I do think that we have certainly got a long way to go to ensure that we have proper funded public services for the people that we all represent.
Question 6 withdrawn. I call Nicola Brogan.
Concordia, it was great to see the First Minister speak and attend the Women in Business Awards last week. Does the First Minister agree that women are leading the way across our society?
Yes, it was a great. It was a great initiative. Women in Business Awards is always such a positive event, celebrating all that is great, all the innovators right across the business community. And I have to commend the women in business themselves for the work that they do to support women, to ensure that they have the skills in which to step forward, whether that's to be an entrepreneur, a social economy, or even just to do better in the career that they're in. But when we look across society, we can reflect on so many positive changes that are evident in this chamber itself. The number of women in politics, I think, is something that's something that we can point to as progress. You look around the executive table, likewise, I think we can point to that as progress. And I see it every day in all the engagements. You can see women leading from the front in all areas, and in particular on this occasion it was about the celebration of women in business.
Ms Brogan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will the First Minister recommit today to tackling issues facing women and girls in our society?
Yes, I can. You may have seen at the weekend, writing in the Irish Times, Justine McCarthy wrote, "Misogyny is killing women, but it is sexism that facilitates it." And I think that is a real wake-up call. Together, we have to break the cycle of violence and support those women and girls who refuse to be silenced. And all of us in this chamber have a role to play in doing that, in confronting, challenging them, or challenging where we see it, confronting and exposing it where we see it. This thing that's called casual, everyday sexism, there is nothing casual about it. That's why from day one this has been a priority for our executive, and our strategy tackles the root causes of this violence. Very much is all about prevention, and as I said, I think that's going to have a positive and lasting impact for our wider society here. But we'll do this whenever we work together. All of the parties of this chamber, working with our partners out there across society, we need to do everything that we can to break down barriers, to challenge the sexism where it occurs and the misogyny where it occurs. I'm certainly committed to that, and I know that members elected here are also up for that too.
Honourable McMurray.
Thank you to the First Minister. The Executive Office report Ending Violence Against Women and Girls documents attitudes of 16-year-olds in Northern Ireland and the prevalence of adverse childhood experiences. What role does the First Minister feel that the Executive Office has in tackling all such adverse experiences?
First Minister.
I'm not sure if I picked up the question right, so if I didn't, given the time, if I didn't, I will write to you to confirm. But I think one of the beauties of our strategy itself is the fact that so many partners came together to devise the strategy itself, including those groups who work with young people. I think that's what you referred to, Andy. I'm sorry I didn't quite hear you properly, so I'll check the Hansard and I'll write to you. But I think you were asking about adverse incidents and how we can change that. The The beauty of the strategy itself is that it's agile as well, so we can respond to issues as they arise. So if we pick up information that's not reflected in the strategy, we can adapt. And if that's not what you ask me, then I will write to you to confirm.
Time was lapsed. Questions to the First Minister. So we now move to the next item of business. If members just take their ease for a moment while we change the chair.